On January 10th, 1776, Common Sense would be published. It quickly became very popular in America and sold over 500,000 copies during its first year. With that in mind, let's get into the actual content of Common Sense. Paine notes that society in every state is a blessing, and that government, even in its best form, is a necessary evil. Paine illustrates the idea of an evolution of government with the idea of a group of people in an isolated area, and that one man may start something and his strength alone won't be enough, so that another person joins in, and likewise a multitude of people, and this results in the creation of a society. In this society, they will need to establish a government in order to, quote, supply the defect of moral virtue. The first form of government they will have will be under a tree, where they will pass regulations, convene, and if anyone is caught for a violation, they would be punished with, quote, public disesteem. As the colony grows larger, they will need representatives to act on behalf of the people. And if everyone were to meet, that would render it inconvenient. This representation would look like dividing the colony into, quote, convenient parts. It's also worth noting that Paine draws this form of government idea from a principle in nature. Paine also expresses that the simpler the government, the better, because it's easier to repair. And this is why the English Constitution is not working too well, because it is too complex and thus very hard to find where the fault lies. And Paine claims that by examining the English Constitution, you will find the, quote, base remains of two ancient tyrannies compounded with some new republican materials. Some of the critiques Paine makes is remains of monarchical tyranny in the king, the remains of aristocratical tyranny, and that the virtue of the representatives determines the freedom of England. His main point is that anyone who might say the branches check each other, that argument is farcical, and that in fact they do not check each other. Paine also notes that the crown is overbearing. He does, however, acknowledge that England is undoubtedly safer than other countries, and also acknowledges that the crown is not as oppressive in England than it might be in Turkey. Paine then begins to talk more about America and discusses the struggle between England and America, and how men of all ranks embarked in the controversies, and the debate is still not settled, which leaves arms and fighting as the last resource to decide the contest, in that the king made this choice. Paine compares the argument about it being necessary to be allied with Great Britain to that as a child never eating meat and only milk for the next 20 years. America would have thrived just as much, if not more, if no European power had been involved. Paine rebuts the argument that Europe has protected America and says that it protected America at the Americans' expense, and Europe did so for trade and dominion. Britain also drags America into war, and the miseries at Hanover should warn them of having such connections. That France and Spain may never be enemies of America, perhaps, but because of Great Britain, they might. Paine makes the distinction that Europe and not England is the parent of America, and compares England to a monster, not a mother. The tyranny that drove the first descendants to America is now chasing them. Paine notes that not even 1/3 of the descendants in his province are even English, and claiming the mother country as England is selfish. Even if all were English, it doesn't matter. The first king of England, William the Conqueror, was actually French, and if going by that reasoning, then England ought to be governed by France. Paine reiterates the damages facing America for having a connection with Britain. Paine notes the deaths as reason for separation, and also notes the geographical distance as a reason for separation. Paine notes that the Reformation was preceded by America, as if it was a place for the persecuted, and speculates that this was the work of the Almighty. Paine also finds it absurd for an island to govern a continent. England and America belong to different systems, England to Europe and America to itself. Quote, "A government of our own is our natural right." Paine notes that those who oppose independence know not what they do.